One of the great things about coming to the Great British Beer Festival is it actually gives us the opportunity to showcase some of our new product developments. So we've got a great audience of people here, and we've got new beers that we can try out, get some feedback on it. This is a stout. In some ways, this isn't really a new product development. It's almost an old product development. Whereas what we've done is researched our old brewing journals. So we've got 160 years of history, and we've got brewing journals where we still to this day, every brew that we make, we write out the recipe and the brew into a leather-bound journal. Now, we don't have to do that. We've got computers that data log absolutely everything, but I'm not going to be the head brewer that stops the tradition of these old brewing records. What I thought was particularly interesting was that prior to 1914, prior to the First World War, we actually brewed quite a lot of stout. And that's something that we haven't done for 100 years. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be really interesting to look at one of these old recipes and try and recreate the beer from 100 years ago? So this is what we have. What
a romantic story of the leather-bound journals and the revival of a recipe from 100 years ago.
Yeah, we've had to use a little bit of interpretation. There's the way that they recorded the records in the journals in those days. For example, hops, they would only list the grower, they wouldn't list the variety. But they would have been Fuggles or Goldings, so we've selected Fuggle hops for this particular beer. Similarly, quite often brewers use a little bit of sugar in their recipes in those days, so maybe 10% of the extract would have been brewing sugar. Again, in the journal, just listed as sugar D, so I interpreted that to mean Demerara sugar, which is a nice, rich brown beer. It's going to work beautifully with a luscious dark beer like this.
I'm going to dive in. Oh, that's got a lovely, lovely smell to it. Just very
lovely,
molasses.
Yeah.
If you'd said you'd use molasses instead of Demerara or something like that.
So there's black malt. We use roasted malts. That gives the colour to the beer. So we use two types of roasted malt. Malted oats. There's around about 10% malted oats in there. That really gives it a smooth balance, almost like an oily texture to the beer. And then the little ingredient that we've snuck in here, and I'm not sure was really in the original recipe, but we used a little bit of smoked malt. So there's a small amount of beechwood smoked malt, and that I think just gives a really, it's delicate, it's not obvious, but with all those sort of rich, dark, toasty flavours, that little bit of smokiness in the background I think just adds to the depth of flavour of the beer.
It's a beer because you're talking about using sugar in the brewing process. You're expecting it to be very sweet, but it's actually very refreshing. Very light, isn't it?
What sugar will actually do is it'll dry the beer out, so it gives you a lower finishing gravity. So a lot of the really great classic beers have a small percentage of brewing sugar in. So I can think of some very famous cask conditioned beers that use a percentage of sugar. And I think it does just help with that drinkability. It gives a smoothness to the beer. It doesn't give the sweetness because the sugar is turned to alcohol.
Yeah. You're right, it's very dry, and I always think that's a very clever way of encouraging one to want to drink more.
Absolutely. Well, if we can do that, I think we've job done, really, isn't it?